Out of an abundance of caution and to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, all CMU classes will move to online classes after spring break of 2020.
So this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, perhaps once-in-a-century event, something we've never faced before. And the sectors of the economy that are most vulnerable and are going to be disrupted the most are those that haven't had much disruption for the last 50 or 100 years. And that is healthcare and higher education. In the healthcare, we're already seeing it, but in higher education, we are yet to feel how this is going to fundamentally alter the way we do business. And part of the reason the disruption is happening is because we have built systems which are not adaptable or resilient. We have taught educated people the same way for hundreds of years. And to do that, we have built an infrastructure and a business model which has very high operating leverage or fixed costs. These facilities, infrastructure, faculty are dedicated faculty along functional lines, along disciplines, and so they are not very adaptable to changing circumstances. And so all of a sudden, one big change is going to be the rise of online education. Many faculty have never dealt with that. There's going to be also changes in what kind of education is offered over the next decade, because the demand for certain disciplines is going to decline, for other disciplines is going to increase. So it's going to be very important for universities to be more flexible and adaptable in the way they deploy resources. And so it's a sea change. It's something we have never experienced before, and hopefully we never experience again. But what it has done is exposed our big vulnerability, which is very, very high operating leverage, lots of fixed assets. If you look at a university, we have lots of buildings, we have parking services, we have administrative support, we have residential dining halls and dorms, we have student organizations. All these are ancillary to the educational system, but consume a lot of resources. And what will happen if we go online, where we don't have students on campus, or we have fewer students on campus? Our facilities are not scalable. And so this is a challenge that every university is going to face, and I think the ones that will do best are the ones who are ahead and developing systems that are more resilient and adaptable. I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic because we have an amazing group of faculty. If you think about what is our really most important capital in a university, it is expertise that faculty have. And it's the soft capital, which doesn't show up on your accounting statements. But that's the most critical capital, and that we have. And what we have to do is, how do we deploy it? How do we leverage it? And how do we deliver it for a much better student experience? And that's what is going to be challenging, but I'm very optimistic that we have the resources that we can execute.
It's easy to say that we've entered a new norm, and education as we know it, for both educators and learners, is bound to change. As we enter the unknown, it becomes our new normal. How should adult educators respond? We should innovate and rely more on self-directed learning. Every educator should have their own mission statement and set of goals when creating curriculum or facilitating. All of us, both learners and educators, need to respond to the changing world that has thrust us into the online learning environment. Every challenge is an opportunity. COVID-19 is the established challenge for adult learners. Although the education system has resisted change for 150 years, our new norm makes innovation necessary. What new innovations will you add to your tool belt? Why should we increase blended learning? If we hear it, say it, read it, write it, and do it, the better we retain it. So the more methods that we incorporate into our curriculum, the better it is for our students. The importance of collaborative learning go beyond social skills. It helps the development of higher level thinking, oral communication, self-management, and leadership skills. It promotes the interactions between the learner and the educator. You'll see increases in learner retention self-esteem, and responsibility. Also increased exposure and understanding of diverse perspectives. Experience is also gained for real-life social and employment situations. The ways interactive learning can change the learner's experience. Versatility can offer more ways to learn. Autonomy will let the learner choose. Flexibility will allow for change in plans. Adaptability will help navigate the demands and illustrate that it's okay to learn from failure and enjoyable. We've all heard the gamification of learning. Now, most of this has been known since the 70s. Why haven't we seen more change in higher education based on how adults learn?
When Malcolm Knowles first proposed andragogy, it had 4 principles about the way adults learn. However, over time and with further research, 2 additional andragogical principles were added. It's important to note that these are generalizations and don't necessarily apply to individual people. The learners need to know. The core principle is that adults need to know why before they engage in learning. It is believed to be more effective if adult learners have shared control of the learning process. There are 3 dimensions to this need to know. First, how the learning will be conducted. Second, what learning will occur. And third, why the learning is important. Self-directed learning. Adults can and do engage in self-directed learning. Adults assume ownership of their own learning. This can mean choosing a formal class or independent study. It does not mean that all adults like to self-teach. Rather, the idea here is that adults make the choice of how they approach the need to learn something new. Prior experience of the learner. Adults bring a plethora of unique experiences to the classroom. Adults' prior experience impacts learning because their previous knowledge is built upon. However, adults' prior experience can also cause biases that can create a natural tendency to resist new learning. Readiness to learn. Adults generally become ready to learn when something in their life causes them to need to learn something. For example, a new job or career change. Further, adults may have many life impediments to learning, such as family and career, which can negatively affect an adult's readiness to learn. Orientation to learning and problem solving. Adults generally prefer a problem-solving orientation to learning rather than a subject orientation to learning. Further, adults learn best when the skill or knowledge is placed into a real-world context. Motivation to learn. Adults tend to be more motivated to learn by things that help them solve real-world problems or help to improve their lives in some way. They tend to be more intrinsically motivated, wanting to be successful learners and wanting to enjoy the learning process.
We should focus on andragogy. As adult learners, we bring motivation, a need to know, vast experience, self-concepts, a readiness to learn to this orientation of learning. As educators, we should make an agreement with our learners, have clear learning goals and objectives, focus on problem resolution or solving problems, utilize case studies and peer reviews, allow the learners to evaluate themselves, use practical application to assess knowledge and skills gained. While we navigate through these unprecedented times, remember change is the only consistent in life. We should be more prepared for it. Higher education will change because of this pandemic. The changes should be implemented based on research. Innovations and self-directed learning should be incorporated